What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. This is Cadman Cycling. Back at it again today with a great race. I'm really excited to bring this one to you. Back at Crit City, this is the 8-lap version around the bell lap direction. So that means up the rollers and down the cobbled climbs. In my opinion, the harder direction for a total of 9.8 miles. Good sized group today. We got 28 racers here. This is a Cat C race. Again, strategy is pretty much the same. We'll just try to sit in, see how long we can last, and get ready for the sprint finish if we're lucky enough to get there. So thanks for joining. I'm going to show the full race today, so if you're interested, stick in there. I'll be here along with you, commentating along the way, telling you how I feel, and giving some race insights. If not, that's totally fine. I'll add some channel markers at the bottom of this video, so if you want to jump towards the last lap, no problem. And thanks for joining. The last lap's a crazy one, so that's why I'm kind of keeping the full video today. It was a fun race, so wanted to go through all of it and set up everything going into the final lap. Lots of attacks, good sprint finish, but without ruining anything, just wanted to give that insight going in here just to the first lap. And thanks everyone for being here. And if you enjoy these videos and you haven't subscribed yet, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It helps me out as a YouTuber, but it also helps build the Zwift community. I know I have a lot of fun in these larger races. We have 28 riders here today. And the more Zwift grows, I think the more fun it becomes. So anyway, jumping into this race, we're half a mile in. I am in the red jersey, blue bibs. It's a bike and beer jersey, which I've kind of enjoyed. I've worn it a few times. I also have a new bike today. So just before this race, I used some drops and I bought the Canyon Air Road. Thanks to a subscriber for pointing out that it's a little bit better than the Ribble Endurance that I was on previously, at least for the level I'm at within Zwift. So I'm at level 17. I have the Zip 808 wheels on, and now I have the Canyon Air Road, which I believe is the best setup for the current level I'm at within Zwift, at least for these kind of all-around races. There's some better climbing setups, maybe some better time trial setups, but for all-around, I'm happy with where I'm at now with this new purchase. So we'll see how that works out. About 0.4 miles into this race, I kind of surged by accident and found myself on the front of the race. One interesting thing to point out that I immediately noticed in this race was the legs were not having it. Really early on. I mean, I'm used to these Crit City races are very tough. They're kind of high energy all the time. But I usually feel it in the legs kind of starting into the second half of the race. First lap, I immediately felt it. So it's kind of, I guess I've been away from Zwifting for a little bit. Kind of been off and on throughout the summer, but I think this is my first race in the last 2 weeks, I would say. It's just tough with the weather so nice. It's easy to get outside and play other sports, ride the bike outside. Just not quite as many opportunities to throw the bike on the trainer indoors, which is, I mean, that's what biking is all about, right? Getting outside, enjoying the outdoors. So no complaints here, but kind of been away from Zwift for a little bit. So we'll see how it goes. The legs aren't feeling great, so immediately my strategy kind of changes. I'll try to up the cadence a little bit, try to get my heart working a little harder than the legs are. I find at the lower RPMs or lower cadence, generally I feel like the heart rate stays lower, but the legs are working harder. So on a day like today, I want to do the exact opposite, where I'll try to keep my cadence a little bit higher than normal. I don't really do it the full race, but at least for now, I want to keep the cadence a bit higher, see if the heart rate gets up a little bit more, a bit more cardio, but try to keep the legs as long as I can because they're not feeling great right now. I got a ghost power up on the first lap, so that's not extremely helpful. We saw there was actually another rider who got a ghost power up who kind of used it to try to create a break. At Crit City, that's not usually going to work out. So he disappeared and popped up again, maybe, I don't know, 50 meters in front of this group, but not extremely helpful. So I'll just go ahead and use the ghost. No plan to make a break here or anything. I'll just sit in the group, kind of use the power up because I had it, see what I get next lap. So immediately I noticed we're in a pretty big group. This is usually how it works at Crit City. These short races, people can stay in it. It's kind of like everyone has the same strategy that I do. It's just hang on for as long as possible until you hit a breaking point. If you're lucky, or if you kind of work hard and feel good today, then you'll be able to hang on till the end and kind of throw your hat in the ring at the sprint. But otherwise, you kind of give it everything you have for as long as you can, and then get dropped, hopefully as late in the race as possible. So just finished the second lap, quarter of the way through the race. We'll see what power up we get this time around, and it's a steamroller. So the steamroller here at Crit City is good on the cobbled climbs. In this direction, we go down that cobbled climb. So it's not a climb. It's just down the cobbles, I guess ramp you would call it, or downhill. So I'll save that, kind of use it. That's in the second half of the lap. Actually kind of an interesting feature when it comes to the last lap of this race, just because that's kind of the last feature in the race. Then there's a lot of turns and corners, but ultimately very flat going into the finish. So in this direction, the cobbled climb going downhill is kind of the last big feature, with about 0.5 miles left before the finish. But in this case, I'll just save the steamroller power up is what it's called. And I'll save this until we get to that cobbled climb downhill section. So heart rate is at 180, which isn't crazy. Actually pretty good for this point in the race. We're now on the third lap. It could be a little higher. It has been higher, but overall the heart's feeling good. Legs kind of still feeling it. I'm doing my best to kind of just stay in the middle of this pack. Again, that's usually my strategy, but I think actually in this race I kind of stayed further towards the back of the pack than I usually do. I found myself, I surged by accident in the first lap and found myself on the front, and since the legs weren't feeling great, I kind of just wanted to avoid that in this race. So I, rather than sitting in the middle of the pack like I usually do, kind of near the front wheel, I kind of concentrated on spending more time in the back of the pack. Of course, as I mentioned that, here I am moving my way through towards the front, but when I find myself getting too close, I immediately lower the power, try to stay on the back of the pack as much as possible, and avoid the surging. In a race like this, kind of surging out in front where you get in the wind, and then kind of out the back of the pack where you have to kind of up the power just to jump back on with the group, is eventually what hurts you later in the race. So Crit City races, they're all short races, but there are a few different versions. There's the anti-sandbagging version, which for Cat C is 6 laps. But this is kind of I wouldn't say longer version. This is the middle distance. So this one's 8 laps. So it's a little bit longer than a few of the other Crit City races I do. This one's just the Crit City race. And there are longer versions. I think I've maybe tried a 10-lap race once around Crit City. But those are not few and far between, but just not quite as common. I'd say these 8-lap races are the average distance for Crit City. But for me, I consider it the longer distance, just because I also do those anti-sandbagging races that are 7.4 miles in 6 laps. So again, just trying to concentrate on conserving energy as much as possible. So this time around, just starting the 4th lap, again got the steamroller power up, so I'll go ahead and use it at the same exact spot that I did last time. And this is where we can kind of start talking about sprint strategy. Again, it's still very, very early on in the race. So currently the goal is just kind of maintain pace with the pack, hang on as long as I can. But going into this race, I did have kind of a few sprint changes that I wanted to make. And again, thanks to a lot of the subscribers who comment on my videos are extremely helpful. And as they watch kind of these race breakdowns, actually helping me with a lot of the analysis and adding comments about what I could be doing better and where I can improve. So these kind of tips actually came from the subscribers, and this was my first race where I just completely tried to focus on making those changes to my sprint, because there had been a few races where I found myself in the right position, just couldn't quite, either the timing was off on the sprint or didn't get enough power down. Just kind of the fun and games and attacks on the final lap I hadn't quite figured out yet. So kind of found myself getting stuck near the back, hanging on with the group until the final lap, but then kind of not being competitive in the sprint finishes. So this is the first race with those new sprint focuses. And the first one is I want to keep my cadence higher earlier in the sprint. I found in previous sprints, I would immediately, like maybe with 0.2, 0.3 miles left, actually probably closer to 0.2, so say 600, 700 feet, I would immediately jump into my highest gear and then start the sprint. So what that means is it would drop my cadence extremely low, and then I'd have to put the power down to try to kind of get that cadence back up. And a lot of times that happened too late and somebody had already made a jump. And then because my cadence was low for that short period of time while I was shifting gears, I had already lost the sprint before it started. So goal going into this race is don't shift into my highest gear before the sprint starts. Kind of start working my way through the gears while I'm already starting my sprint. And that way I keep my cadence high, I'm a bit more snappy, and if someone makes a move, I can immediately jump on it and hold with them, and hopefully then once I get to that highest gear, I can put down as much power as possible to stick with them. So that's kind of the first tip, first strategy that I have in the back of my head, just thinking about the sprint finish, again hoping that I get there. Now we're over halfway through the race, lap 5. I believe that time I got the drafting boost, so I used it kind of coming out of the roller section, just because in my opinion that's the hardest part of this race, or kind of most technical segment. Those rollers kind of, it's tough to maintain and kind of an even power output through those rollers. And actually, if you tried to maintain an even power output, I think there'd be a good chance that you get dropped, just because people tend to surge going up and over and then back down those small hills. So I went ahead and used that drafting power up there, kind of going towards the second half of the rollers. The rollers start smaller, and then as you get to the end, you get to your kind of the biggest ups and downs. So I engaged the power up probably just a little bit before halfway through the rollers, and then that way I can use it over that final roller, and just make sure I stick with the group and maybe don't have to put out the crazy power output, 350, 400 watts. Crazy for me, I guess I'll say, just to stay with the group. So saving energy wherever I can. Again, that's kind of the name of the game this race. Wasn't feeling good first lap, but this was actually a really interesting race. I don't know if it was kind of my time away or what it was, but as the race went on, I started to feel better and better. So the legs really hurt the first lap, but it's almost like they just kind of got shocked into like, okay, we're doing this again. And actually now kind of here, lap 5, over halfway through the race, I feel a lot better. The heart rates here, 183, 184. Again, lap 6 of these races, it could be higher. It could be 188, getting closer to 190. So I'm feeling decent, and actually the legs are kind of cooperating more than they were earlier. So it's kind of like I just got them moving. Now the blood's flowing. Honestly, feeling pretty good. So that doesn't really change my strategy. I still want to just stay in the middle of the pack, but as we are getting towards these later laps, and again, I got another drafting boost, so same strategy there. I kind of used it halfway through the rollers, and just making sure I can stay with this group. Don't want anyone getting off the front. And that's kind of where it's not a different strategy, but just going into these last couple laps, I want to make sure I do stay towards the front middle part of the pack, just in case anyone does start to make a move. I'll be able to kind of, if the group kind of breaks in two, I want to always make sure I'm near the front. So if there's 5 or 6 people off the front, and at the end of the roller section or going down the cobbled climb, somebody makes a move and the power gets up and all of a sudden there's a breakaway, I just want to make sure that I'm in a position in the group that I can jump on that and be a part of that. So because I'm feeling a little bit better, because the heart rate's still lower, because the legs are feeling good, I decide kind of in these last few laps that I want to make an effort to stay in that kind of top 8, top 10 area, just so I can respond to attacks. And we see there is one rider off the front made an attack on that downhill, and it immediately changes the pace. It's still early, not early in the race, but early for attacks like this to be made. And we can see the pace picks up, and that lone rider off the front is immediately caught. But it effectively, as I kind of get stuck behind him a little bit as some of the other group passes me by, I have to up the wattage because I felt like I kind of got stuck to the back of that rider as others were passing. I couldn't get around. But anytime a move like that is made, what it does is it increases the power output, it increases the speed of the race. And this was a decently fast race. I looked at some of my previous Crit City races for this distance, and this wasn't the fastest, but it was within 5 to 10 seconds of being the fastest. So overall, one of the faster races. And that's what you get with these larger groups. So 28 riders at one of these races is, I would say, a little bit more than I'm used to. But I like it. I like having these bigger groups. They're more competitive, more fun. So overall, group is back together, and now it's kind of getting towards crunch time. So I've mentioned this before. A lot of times this second last lap or the penultimate lap is the slowest in these races. Didn't quite notice that this time. It could have been. Generally, people are trying to catch their breath before the final lap, but we're just over 2 miles to go. Again, I got the drafting boost, so I think that's 3 straight laps with the drafting boost. I'll use it at, again, the same exact time. I'm pretty happy with that area that I used it in. It's been working kind of, especially now as people may start making attacks. Generally not second last lap, but as the pace could pick up, I'm just using that drafting boost to make sure I stay near the front. And that's exactly what I do. I did kind of put out a burst of energy, got the power up over 400 for a second, but again, I'm feeling good. Legs are fine. Heart rate's a little bit higher, but it's the second last lap, 2 miles left. So totally fine. Feeling good. I like where I'm at. We got a decent sized front group. So currently says I'm in 12th, 10th, 14th. And there's a few guys behind me. So looks like we got a group of maybe 16 riders. That would be a big sprint finish. Again, the last lap is where it gets interesting as people start making attacks. So that full group most likely won't make it to the finish line. So again, that's why coming into this last lap, I want to be in the top 8 riders. I want to be in the position that if someone makes a move, I'm there to be ready for it. That's not saying that if a solo rider just breaks off the front, I'm going to follow him or her. It just means that if a large group starts to make a move, I want to be there to react to it. Because generally, even on the last lap, if a rider makes a move early, they'll generally get caught. It's very tough to stay away with the Zwift drafting techniques, especially at Crit City. Yeah, I don't think I've seen a move been made with like right around kind of the 1 lap to go banner that stuck. But I have seen moves with maybe half a lap to go, or something like half a mile to go, that a breakaway would work. So again, kind of keeping all that in the back of my mind, also keeping my new sprint strategy in the back of my mind. The second half of the strategy is just go early, earlier than I'm comfortable with, because I always go too late. I always wait too long. I'm always reactive. So I want to go earlier than I'm comfortable with. The last thing I want to do is go too late, and then just look at it and see a missed opportunity. So even if I go early and then I get caught at the end, I'm okay with that. It's a learning experience, but I definitely don't want to go too late. So this is where it gets really interesting. We have a mile left. I have the featherweight power up, which is perfect. So I'm going to keep this for the sprint. Generally earlier in the race, I would have used the featherweight going over these last couple rollers. But I'm feeling all right. I'm going to keep it for the sprint. As we see, the rider in first actually uses the featherweight. And this is where the game starts. So he uses the featherweight over the last roller, sprints, and then we have another rider with a burrito. The burrito is undraftable. So I don't follow him, because I know that if I were to follow him, I wouldn't get any draft. So it's really the perfect power up that rider just used. He bridges to the front. Now there's a 2-man breakaway on the front with 0.7 miles left. Is it early? Yes. But is it a dangerous move? That's definitely the case. So the power immediately jumps. I'm at 400 watts, now down to 200, but going down kind of this last feature of the course, we have a little group. The full group's very strung out, but there's 4 of us that, actually now 6 of us, that notice how threatening this attack is becoming. So the power immediately gets up. Again, I feel good. Heart rate's up to 190. Legs are feeling really good, so I'm willing to put in the work. I feel like this group is large enough that we can catch those 2 riders in front. Those 2 riders actually didn't stay together. One just got caught in the orange jersey, pink, orange, salmon jersey that we just passed. Now only 0.3 miles. We got 1 rider kind of alone out in the front, but catchable. So we got this group of 6 of us, 0.3 miles left. I still have this featherweight power up. It seems like a lot of the other riders are using their power ups now, but I am exactly where I want to be. The rider in first gets hit with a cone, and all of a sudden it's just up to the final sprint, 700 feet left, and I use my featherweight power up. I step on it. I want to make sure I'm not late. I immediately get the jump past the coned rider. I'm in first. Now I'm just putting in everything I can to get to the finish line, and I'm able to hold it off. I finally got the Zwift victory that I've been looking for. I got the sprint down. Was it perfect? No. Was it enough? Yes. And guys, I am so ecstatic with this victory. This is a huge accomplishment. Thanks just to all the riders who give tips. They definitely helped me win this race. Hopefully this is another step in the direction towards making it to the category B within Zwift. I definitely want to be there in the next few months, but for now I'm happy with this win. I think I played it pretty well with that final sprint at the end. Was it the most powerful? No, but ultimately got me the win, and I was happy with it. So guys, for everyone who stuck with me throughout that race, thanks a lot for watching. I really enjoy doing these race breakdowns, and you guys are the people that make it possible. So thanks for sticking with me. This is Cadman Cycling, and I can't wait to see you on the next one. Bye.